senior leadership roles in that, work came first and you were expected to be available 24/7 and weekends, and, there was no such thing as a vacation. And if you prioritize your family, it was really viewed as a barrier to your success, right?
Right.
And I was miserable,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
That's when you look around and you say, okay, I want to pursue my career, but this isn't worth it.
Hi, guys. I'm your host, Megan Van Diepender, and this is the Empowerhood Podcast. I am so happy to have you here. Motherhood is hard, and we are going to talk about all of the hard things that just are not talked about enough. So, buckle up and enjoy this episode. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Megan.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm so happy to see your face.
I know it's been a while since we've seen each other. It's really nice to see you.
Yeah, this is like an excuse to talk for an hour, right?
I know, for sure. I was so excited. I'm like, yes, I get to talk to my cousin today. This is going to be awesome.
Yes. So everyone out there listening today, we have Erin Curtis here with us, and Erin is my cousin, like she said, and we have literally known each other our whole entire lives. So I'm so happy to have you here today, Erin, for this subject that we're going to tackle. We are going to talk about asking for help, letting go of control as a parent, and also mom guilt, and really how to get rid of it. And just like how these things do not make us weak as a parent, they actually open up the doors for us to be able to use these resources and, really show up as the mom we want to be and also balance, a demanding career. Erin, you are so good at all of these things. So I can't wait to pick your brain. But before we jump into your whole entire story, tell us a little bit about you. Who is Erin?
Okay. I'm a wife to my husband and a mom to two girls. My oldest, Amelia, is 5, and Tessa is about to be 4. And time flies. I can't believe it. But I grew up kind of moving all around and went to school for writing. And I didn't meet Ryan until much later in life. So I guess not much later in life. I'm not that old, right? But
You're younger than me. Yeah.
I was almost 30 when I met him, right? So
Okay.
I had already established a career in marketing at the time. So like I was sort of, which was good for me, right? I was like more fully baked, right? As a me when I met him. But unlike people who get married a little bit younger, they're building a career and also their relationship at the same time. But I had sort of really gotten my foundation set career-wise before I met Ryan. And very quickly I told him, like, let's get this thing moving. Like, let's have babies. Let's do this.
Right.
So, everything really seemed to accelerate at that point in my life. My career sort of reached a new level at that time. We were engaged and married, in under a year and a half, and then, got pregnant 6 months after we were married. So that was a very sort of busy, stressful time. And that certainly brought up all of the things that we're going to talk about today. But yeah, who I am, I mean, I'm super fun, I think, right? Most of the time. I like to be silly and play with my kids. I'm not very organized or clean. Ryan always tells me that I prioritize activities and relationships over order, which I'm like, I think I'm fine with that. But yeah, so I mean, I think we're pretty normal. We have a dog. We like to play tennis. We like to be outside. All those good things.
Yeah. What do you do for work, Erin?
So I'm in marketing. I'm a vice president of marketing and product development at a manufacturing company. So yeah, I get to basically communicate with people. That's what marketing is, really. And I get to also look at the exciting new part of my career is being able to look at new products that we can introduce to the market, that people need, answering unmet needs in the marketplace. So that's been a new sort of layer to my career recently.
Okay. Now you said like when you got married and you got pregnant really quickly, so you were already pretty established in your career. You loved it. Did you always know that you were going to go back to work after having child, or what were your plans?
I mean, yeah, I think I never really thought about not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I almost don't know if it was a question I asked myself.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was, complete honesty and transparency. I mean, part of that was, yes, I wanted to, but I also needed to. Ryan is a veterinarian, but he's a veterinarian with a very specific specialty. He was in school for 12 years, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was necessary for us both to be working if we wanted to sort of, not drastically change our lifestyles. And we decided that, we
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to. So it was kind of a little bit of both in a way, but I really never truly considered not going back to work.
Right. So you're
Yeah.
saying it was financial and it was like a purpose, like your purpose. You really wanted to follow your passion and continue to do it.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and I think when I had my second daughter, that's when I started getting some comments, even from people, like older members of the family, like, you're still gonna work? And
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, yeah. Well, why are you asking me? Well, ask Ryan if he's gonna still work," you know?
Right. Like, why is it a thing? Why? Yeah.
Right. And I
Yeah.
remember feeling a combination of guilt, right? Well,
Yeah.
okay, no, I am still gonna work. Does that make me a bad mom?
Mm-hmm.
And also a little bit of anger, that I was put in this position where I was made to feel like I should choose.
Right.
Um, you know, so that was a tricky time to navigate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I truly think there's like really no right or wrong answer, right? Like it sucks that we're put pressure is on us. Like I mean, I've always worked since I became a mom, but I also like I don't think there's a right or wrong answer if you stay home or if you do work. I think
Absolutely.
it's like totally up to you because obviously staying home with your children is a full-time job all the time and
No
probably
doubt.
even harder than our careers, but
No doubt.
it's not about right or wrong. We're just talking about like having a demanding career today. Yeah,
I think
and
that's a
making
really good point to make. And one that I was thinking about as I sort of prepared for this chat. Yes, that's different. That looks different for everybody. You know
mm-hmm.
what I mean? I think it's all about as a person, right? Keeping gender out of it. What
Mm-hmm.
keeps you fulfilled and driven and challenged, And for some people, that doesn't mean an outside, job. Um, for me, it does,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I
Right.
think I think for me, it also, I had times though where my career, wasn't making me happy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that was one of the things I wanted to be very specific about too. I mean, when I deal with mom guilt now, when I'm traveling or away from home, you know, to me, it's positive because I'm at a company now where I know that their values align with my own when it comes to family, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was at a company previous to this, where that was not the case.
Right.
Um, they were, I think, very antiquated in the way that they approached uh, senior leadership roles, in that, work came first and you were expected to be available 24/7 and weekends. And, there was no such thing as a vacation. And if you prioritize your family, it was really viewed as a barrier to your success, right?
Right.
I was miserable,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
That's when you look around and you say, okay, I want to pursue my career, but this isn't worth it.
Right.
It's just,
Right.
it doesn't make any sense. So something that I adjusted to pretty recently in the previous 2 years was, this has to be worth it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's important for me to say, I'm going to quit this job.
Right.
And, I need to find a place that is aligned with my values as a parent, right? And have a
Right.
company that values family and isn't going to question me if I say, hey, Amelia needs to go to the doctor today. I'm not going to be in until later. Or,
Right.
hey, I'm going to do this field trip with Amelia, or I'm on vacation,
Yeah.
and I'm not bothered unless it's a total emergency, right?
Right.
So I think that's important as you pursue your career, to make sure that when your kids see you going to work,
Mm-hmm.
that it's a positive experience, right? That you're not
Right.
modeling that this is a negative, super stressful, thing that's taking me away from my family, both physically and mentally, right?
Right. Right. Because I mean, obviously, we have to earn an income, we have to support our family. But I love how you say that it has to be worth it because, like, number one, it should be something that you like, right? Or
Right.
at least like fuels you to want to go there and like pursue it and be passionate about it and grow and, learn new things and whatnot. But also, like, you want to be able to make enough money to support your family, but is
Mhm.
money everything, right? Like, I mean, you kind of have to think of that, like, time wise, the time that it's taking you
Absolutely.
away from your family, like you said, if it's that demanding,
Right.
is it going to be worth it? And the stress on your body and
Yeah.
whatnot. I mean, I know I've definitely come to points in my life where I'm like, all right, I need to reset my boundaries, and my priorities, because this isn't making me happy anymore, or really enhancing my life in any way besides like having an income. And I think
Absolutely.
life is much more than just having like a cushy income too.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I mean, money's necessary, but I think we all know money's not going to make you happy, right?
Exactly.
You can't
Right.
take it with you. I know a
Right.
lot of people who are very unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like we have to pay the bills, of course. And obviously, we all have a lifestyle that we want to live. And if you need to
Mhm.
support that, you need to support that. But I mean, I think, yeah, you really do have to ask yourself, like, what am I actually sacrificing? Am I
Right.
sacrificing my own happiness? Am I sacrificing my family's happiness?
Right.
And again, with like the guilt too, because like you said, when you're working all those hours and not, it's like guilt coming both ways. You're
Absolutely.
not pleasing the business you're working for, and then you're not being home with your family, and then you're
Right.
exhausted. It's like, where do you draw the line where you can find like that balance?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And balance is interesting too. I mean, it doesn't, and it's something I've thought about a lot in my career, but balance is, not always just, the division of time.
Mm-hmm.
Because even at this previous company I worked at, it was during the pandemic. I was working from home almost, exclusively. So I was there, right? I didn't have a
Mm-hmm.
commute time, but because I was so distracted all of the time, and receiving calls at all hours of the day, like even though I was physically there, I wasn't present, right?
Right.
So that's not balance either.
Yeah.
Balance can be quality, over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I've come to realize about balance too is that it's not an achievement. Like, and what I mean by that is it isn't this like finite thing that like you get,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And I kept thinking of it that way at that time in my life and kept feeling like I was failing and feeling like I was losing,
Yeah.
like you were saying in both areas, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have balance. But a coworker of mine was talking to me about her experience with balance, and she described it as a constant recalibration.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems obvious, but that was a real aha moment for me that it's not something that like you achieve, you get, and then, oh, you've got balance forever, and that's the way that it should be. Balance is always, even if you think about a gymnast or like balancing on a Bosu ball,
Mm-hmm.
or like you're always recalibrating, you're always adjusting.
Right.
So I came to view balance less as an achievement and more as a process,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
More as the idea of like achieving flow.
Yeah.
And, that might mean sometimes, right, that I'm on a business trip and Ryan's at home, taking
Mm-hmm.
on, more of the childcare and I'm FaceTiming, right? Or it might mean that, I'm working from home more days of the week and I have a business that respects that, a company that allows
Mm-hmm.
me to do that. Or taking time off just to do one-on-one time with my, one of my daughters, right?
Yeah.
So it's not this like static, like the stasis, right, of
Mm-hmm.
balance all the time. Balance looks different every day, you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like balance is such a word. Like, a lot of people are like, there's no such thing. But I think, like you said, I think it means something different for each
Yeah,
person. And I don't think it is ever going to be the same. Like you said, like, I think, it's almost like health, right? Like, you can't just be like, oh, I ate healthy, I made it here, I'm done. Like, no, it
right,
doesn't work that way. You're like, it's a constant like growth and like thing that
right.
you have to work on every day. It's like a lifestyle. So like, I feel like balance is like the same way. Like, you don't just do one workout and you're like, oh, made it, my muscles are
Yeah,
there, I can stop now. You have to constantly be aware of what's going to work for you today, what's going to work for your family, each day.
yeah, and I think too, for me and our family, the biggest key to that is the communication between my spouse and I, right? And making sure that we're supporting each other in the right ways. And Ryan is an amazing partner to me. And, you know, he always says, like, he doesn't like when people, oh, your husband's amazing. He's like, I'm just being a partner. You know, a lot of times when the male takes on a little bit more of the traditional, you know, female responsibilities, people like make a big deal out of it. And he always gets a little frustrated by that. Like, well, no, just being a husband and a father, right? But the point is that, you know, we've also sometimes gotten to a point where I realize, like, he is shouldering too much and I need to come back down and make sure that I'm taking some things off of his plate. And, you know, when we've gotten out of balance and felt, you know, like there's, you know, moments where we're not in sync, it's because we're not communicating about what one another needs in order to create that balance, right? And he has a demanding kid as well, you know, so you know, there has to be that constant communication because, you know, you're part of a unit, you're part of a family unit. It's not about, you know, oh, I feel balanced today, but if Ryan's feeling out of balance, right? That's not going to work for the family.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think communication is definitely key because, like, I always say to people, I'm like, or I think I say to myself, I'm like, all right, he cannot read my mind. I need to, like, actually, like, speak it because we can huff and puff around the house and be like, oh, God, he didn't help me with the dishes or something stupid like that. But if he doesn't know, like, then how are we supposed to know? And, like, same vice versa. Like, if he's frustrated with me or needs help in some area, you know, you really need to voice it. Just put it out there because, again, like, we know each other so well, right, as a partner, as partners, but at the same time we can't think like you just don't know your partner's thoughts, so you just need to put them out there and just make sure that they do know. And I mean, that is so helpful. I mean, did you always, like, feel like Ryan just, like, naturally helped, or did you, like, have to ask him for help?
No, Ryan always naturally helped, which is a blessing, right? I mean, yeah, he always naturally helped, but in terms of asking for help, I mean, I sort of learned my first lesson with that in a very dramatic way when Amelia was born, because she spent some time in the NICU, and it was a very tough time, and I had postpartum. And originally, when we were getting ready, you know, for her to be born, I told my mom, like, we're going to spend time alone as a family. And, you know, like, we want to have this experience ourselves, and then we'll invite you over, blah, blah, blah. And then when all of that was happening, I remember calling her in tears and like, I need you to come, you know? And then when I had my second daughter, I was like, so mom, like a week before my due date, I'm like, come on up, you know, like, pack your bags, you know.
Yeah, like, come help now, please.
Yeah, come help now, right? Like, I already know I'm gonna need help. And it's advice that I've given to all of my siblings, like, have mom come and help, because she's there to help take care of me. Like, that's what I realized when she did come, is that she wasn't, like, trying to hone in on the experience of caring for the baby. She was help me. But, you know, that was sort of one of my first, you know, with the postpartum depression, my first battles with mental health, right? And then since then, I would say, you know, since 2020 and the pandemic, I've had two times where my mental health has really been a struggle for me. And, you know, it was wrapped up in a lot of things. In 2020, the pandemic, we had moved, you know, so we weren't by family anymore. My job was secure, but we had lost business, you know, and I was in that, you know, sort of very stressful environment. All the social injustice things that were also exploding at that time were weighing very heavily on me. And I got very depressed and very anxious. And I withdrew. Instead of talking about that, I withdrew from Ryan in terms of telling him how I was really feeling, right? I withdrew from my friends. I withdrew from my family. And, you know, was lashing out in a lot of ways, right? And I had guilt then too, because I wasn't in a good place mentally. And then when I was with my kids, my girls, I just felt like, God, I'm faking it right now. I'm such a horrible
Mm-hmm.
mom. I'm not being authentic. Like, they deserve better than this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I got to a very low point where I finally told my sisters, I'm not in a good place. And they could tell that something was wrong. And they immediately, came up for the weekend. And went to therapy. And
Mm-hmm.
medication was the right thing for me at that time as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was strange. It was like I felt very weak, and I felt, even though I continued to perform at work, you know what I mean? Like I could
Right.
do all of the external things that look like success.
Yep.
But internally, I was in a very dark place, a very scary place, but I didn't feel like I could talk about it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because like you mentioned, earlier, that would be weak, right? To
Right.
admit I'm not in a healthy place
Right.
mentally. But when I finally did, it's just so worth it, right?
Right.
Now I can function better as a wife, as a mother, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and at work, sure. But, um, then the second time I sort of, came to a point where I was feeling like, okay, I was recognizing some of those feelings coming back.
Mm-hmm.
I reached out a lot sooner.
Yeah.
And so that's just, some advice that I would give if you do feel like you're struggling,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, it's really hard to do, but let your spouse know how you're feeling. Let
Mm-hmm.
your friends know how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Let your family know how you're feeling. And if you need to, let work know how you're doing,
Yeah.
right? Be
Yeah.
transparent about those things so that they can help you, right? And encourage you to
Yeah.
stay there.
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard because, I mean, even telling your partner, you still feel, for some reason, I don't know why this is in our society, that you still feel less than, even as a person, as a mom, all of it. And I mean, maybe men feel the same way. I don't know. I definitely feel like as a woman, like we have a lot of pressure on us in that aspect. And especially as a mom, I mean, I don't know how many parents or moms that I have talked to that were like, I went through this, this, and this, and I felt like I could not ask for help because I would be judged.
Right.
And I almost feel like when you do ask for help, no matter how hard it is, each time it's going to get a little bit easier. Each time you're
True.
going to get a little bit stronger. And then you're going to realize that, you know, asking for help is actually the strong thing to do, right? Because it was the hard thing to do. The
That's right.
easy thing would be to stay and sit in these horrible feelings when you're not going to be able to show up as yourself, like you said, each day, even though you could pretend, but that's even more exhausting, right?
Completely.
Pretending that you're okay and that, you're living this dream life, when it's like you're dying inside, So it's like letting go of that burden and putting it out there, whether it's going to be so hard, but it's also going to like set you free too. And
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And you're right about that. I'm not sure why it always seems like we as women or society places this, expectation on women, that they're supposed to do it all, right? And
mm-hmm,
be okay doing it all, right? And,
right.
I like I said, outwardly, if anyone looked at my life on social media, right, it would look like I was
Mm-hmm,
doing it all and doing it well, but I wasn't, right?
right.
And it's very important to me now to share that.
Yeah.
Um, and to share that with some of the younger women and younger moms on my team who work on my team right now, um, to show those moments of vulnerability and to say, this happens and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I want to hear about that if you're struggling, right?
Yeah.
Um, and encourage them that, it's a safe place in the workplace, right?
Mm-hmm,
To share those issues and those challenges and make sure that, they feel comfortable communicating. And I think in the workplace too, I work in a corporate environment, and it's very important, I think, that women support one another in those environments. And
yeah.
unfortunately, we continue to move forward and get better,
Mm-hmm,
but unfortunately, I think we're still working in environments where it feels like there aren't that many seats at the table for women. And so instead of supporting one another, we're competing
it's
with each other.
competitive. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's very important to me to model, right? Um, just a spirit of empowerment and encouragement, right? And support, woman to woman.
Yeah.
Um, And I think, joining women's organizations within your field, can help with that.
Yeah.
Uh, finding a female mentor that you trust, is important and helpful with that.
Yeah.
Uh, and just advocating, for yourself and for others, right?
Yeah.
Uh, it's important.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I do think it has come a long way, just like because I mean obviously with social media, like you said, you do see like the good side of things, right? But I do think people post more of the hardships of motherhood. But I mean, that was my whole point in starting this podcast because these hard things, like you said, your depression and all these things, they're not talked about, right? And even asking for help, like, I mean, some people are really good at it. Some people have to work. Like, I have to work at it every single day. Like, I try to practice it every day because it wasn't something that I was brought up with, I guess. And I do think a lot of this leads back to our childhood, where how we were raised comes into play, where our parents kind of self-sacrificed everything for us.
Right.
And as grateful as I am for all that, it's what I saw and it's what I thought being a mom was.
Right.
So I went into motherhood thinking that I had to do it all.
Right.
That, okay, well, my mom did it with 4 kids, so I can do this with one. Like, I don't need your help. And then it was way harder than I ever expected. And I just trudged along unhappy, kind of resentful until I
Right.
figured out that I could actually like ask for help and people want to help you. Like you just have to be open to
Absolutely.
accepting it. There's
That's right.
people all around you that want to help you. We just have to be open to accepting it. And I feel like that's where it really opens the door to, like you say, finding your balance and that awareness to be able to find a balance each day, because you do have in your head like, all right, like I have this and this going on today, or Amelia and Tessa have something, like, but I can ask my mom, I can ask Ryan, I can ask the nanny or whoever, the babysitter, the neighbor, I don't know, anybody. I mean, really everyone wants to help you.
Right.
um we just
It's so
have to look around and open our eyes and be willing to ask for it.
well, and something that I've been thinking about there too is, if we, I mean, listen, I'm not a scholar in this area, but if you go back to like, I don't want to say ancient civilizations, but before the modern day, women didn't raise their children alone.
Mm,
A lot of times they were living in multi-generational
yeah,
households where there was this concept of the village, right? Like there was always help,
yeah,
you know what I mean? And that concept of communal support and raising your
mm-hmm,
children was sort of embedded into the culture and the fabric of life. And then as, things got industrialized and women entered the workplace, in the 70s and 80s, then this started to, it's almost like the nuclear family got more and more isolated.
yeah,
And, this tension for women, who were choosing to work, just got worse, right?
yeah,
But that's really not the way, I think naturally,
right,
right?
yeah,
We were to do it. It's impossible to do it alone,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I
yeah,
don't think, I think putting that expectation on ourselves as moms is a lie that, the modern culture has sort of, put on us. It's really
yeah,
not, you know, it's not the natural state, right? So,
right,
and I had some of that, too, like little things. So we do have a nanny when the kids aren't in school who help out like in the summer, they're
mm-hmm,
with the nanny. And I used to struggle with if we signed them up for dance class or we signed them up for tennis or whatever, I felt like, well, I have to take them, right? Like,
okay, yeah,
it's my,
mm-hmm,
as the mom, like I have to do it. Okay, it's at 4 o'clock. I have meetings until 5, and like stressing over that sort of thing.
right, right,
But this summer I let go of that and I said, it's okay if the nanny takes them to, you know,
mm-hmm,
to tennis practice or takes them to dance class. Like that's okay. That's balance for me in that moment, and then I
mm-hmm,
can be fully present. If I
mm-hmm.
hadn't done that, right, I would be sitting there at their lesson on the phone, right, or
Right, not present, yeah,
present, right.
right,
So there are those elements of thinking that I have to do
mm,
all the things myself, right?
yeah,
There's certain things that it's okay to let go of, for me, right?
yeah,
Uh, say, all right, that's what this looks like. But to go back to your other point about our childhoods, you're right, Meg. I mean, for many women, they didn't have, I think we're one of the first generations to sort of do it this way for the first time, right?
Mm,
Because a lot of our moms when we were growing up left their careers or were stay-at-home moms, and so we didn't have the model of how to do it.
yeah.
So we're trying to figure it out for the first time,
Yeah.
for
The
ourselves.
balance. Yeah.
The balance, right?
Yeah,
And
I
then,
mean, like you said, if there is a balance, yeah. And I
yeah,
feel like as you said, like with letting go of something, that's like almost you're accepting the help, right? So we're gonna either ask for help and then you're accepting the help. Because
right.
letting go, I feel like is almost the hardest part of asking for help because people kind of offer us help all day long and we'll be like, no, no,
Got it,
like
got it, got it.
right,
Yeah.
right. So like even like
Mhm.
when someone's like, oh, invites you over to their house and you're like, oh, what can I bring? And they're like, oh no, it's okay. It's okay, I can do
Yeah.
it. It's like, no, okay, let me bring something. Like, or like my husband will be like, oh, you want me to wash the dishes tonight? I'll be like, I can do it. Well, of course I can do it. Women can do amazing things and you can probably do it all. You're just gonna burn yourself out completely.
Totally. At what
Um,
cost, right?
Exactly. So like
Yeah,
you can totally run yourself into the ground, get rid of your health, all of these things to try to do it all, but it's not realistic and necessary for the long haul. Like do you really want to be that
that's
person?
right. And that's the other thing, slightly similar that I've recently started to make sure that I'm reminding myself is, we talk about burnout, right? And for me, it was career and kids, right? Those were the two things I was
Mhm.
so focused on balancing all the time.
Mhm.
But I was forgetting myself.
Yep.
I was forgetting my husband,
Yep.
and the time that I was forgetting friends,
Mhm.
And so what I've tried to be more conscious of lately is almost saying, okay, what are the categories of my life that are very important, right? To,
Mhm.
maintaining a sense of well-being, we'll just say, instead of
Right.
balance. So there's self, there's obviously the kids, my husband, career, right? Family finances, whatever it is, right?
Yep.
And I was saying like, okay, if I could grade myself on each one of these things, where would I be, right?
Mhm.
And the focus is sort of on the average, right? Instead of
Mhm.
saying I need to be an A in everything,
Right.
or for me it was two things: bringing awareness to it's not just kids and work,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
ignoring some
Yeah.
other really important parts, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then also saying it's not perfection in everything, right?
Right.
It's making sure that you're at a point of health,
Mhm.
um, you know, collectively as a
Yeah.
whole, in
Yeah.
these important areas of your life. So I've tried to do that. And again, it was a friend of mine who brought that to my attention where we were chatting. We hadn't seen each other in a while, and she's also, you know, a mom and an executive, right?
Mhm.
And we were chatting about work, and I was talking to her about a recent success, and it was great, and yada yada. And she just said, "What are you doing for you?
Yeah.
Like, what do you have for you?"
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I haven't been working out, I haven't been playing tennis, I haven't been, you know, doing yoga or meditate or whatever it is for you, right? It could
Right.
be
Right.
reading a book, it could be, you know, going
Yeah.
on walks or whatever that is for you. And I had nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
made me pull back and say, yeah, I'm forgetting about that part, you know?
Right.
And I
Right.
think as women, we get very caught up in taking care of everything and everyone else and
Mhm.
about that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's like my whole business. I'm a huge
Mhm.
advocate for putting yourself first, not in a selfish way, but because
Right.
your needs matter. And I'm not talking about getting your nails done, your hair done, nothing like that. I'm talking about like basic needs that are going to give you your health, everything: rest, movement,
That's,
nutrition.
yeah.
Yeah.
Rest is a big
Stuff
one.
that you absolutely have to have. It's
Mhm.
non-negotiable because otherwise, I mean, yeah, you can continue to show up, for your kids, show up for your career, but again, you're going to end up burned out and it's just not sustainable. You're
Right.
forgetting some key components in there, and your husband for sure. I
Mhm.
mean, you're a unit, right? Like we said in the beginning, you have to incorporate all of them in. And I mean, like you said, maybe you're not going to be able to get an A+ in every category. Um but do your best, right?
Yeah.
It's like you just got to do the best you can where you're at right now and just try to prioritize what is most important right then. Like I read this book, I think it's Gary Keller, The One Thing. Have you read that book?
Mm-mm.
And it's really good, but I mean, he says that basically Gary Keller is the one that created that crazy real estate group, so he's super successful anyway. But he's like, you can only do one thing at a time if you're going to do it well. You cannot multitask. And I was kind of like, well, he's never met a mom because we're pretty freaking amazing. But I mean, he's right. Like when you do one thing at a time, obviously you're going to be way better at it if you're focusing
Right.
just on one thing at a time. But I'm like, moms can definitely focus on more than one thing at a time and still do it well. Not perfect,
Right.
well. But you still have to prioritize, what is going to come before other things. And I think that's like how my mind like ping pongs kind of all day. It's like, all right, should I do this? Is this more important on the list, or can it wait? You know what I mean? Because it's like you have to delegate. You're going to have to give some tasks to your husband. You're going to have to give some tasks to some other people, whatever, whether it be a house cleaner or whoever is helping you out that day. But you're not going to be able to do it yourself. I saw a statistic. I think I have it right here. 33% of moms are overwhelmed on a daily basis. And I really think it's just the way that we have to think about it differently. You have to think about it in a way where like you said, what hats do I wear are going to come first? Because we wear so many hats, right? As parents, like, or really just as human beings, you wear so many different hats. But like, what is going to come first? Where am I prioritizing this? Like, how can I schedule this into my day?
Totally. And I think, we're all going to feel overwhelmed, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about making sure you don't stay overwhelmed, right? And checking in and saying, all right, I've been in a period of time where I've been overwhelmed, right? And for me, I'm still working on recognizing I'm overwhelmed. Let me make a small adjustment, right?
Right.
Versus I've been overwhelmed for 6 months. Now I feel like I need to make a big adjustment. So I'm still working on checking in more often.
Yeah.
And recognizing that I'm overwhelmed. Okay, what priority needs to shift? Like I almost think of it as like dials on like a, like in a sound booth or whatever. Like
Right.
which thing am I going to turn the volume up on, and which thing am I going to turn the volume down on? To make sure that we're in balance again, right? So yeah,
I mean, that's huge. Like, even just if you do that daily, I mean, like I said, like, is this going to make my day go off the rails, if I do this task right now? Or should I just wait and, do it later or a different day? Because it really can go like that. Or should I be scrolling Instagram right now that it's going to waste a half an hour of my time? Or should I be doing what I really set out to do? It's hard. Like you said, it's a daily thing. And yeah, if you wait 6 months, you're definitely going to be like losing your mind at that point. But it's a practice, right? Just like anything else. I mean, like I said, I have to practice reminding myself to ask for help, instead of trying to fit every single little thing into one day. I don't like to wait. I think that's my problem is like, I have these things that I want to get done in the week, and I'm like, then I try to fit it all into like one day, and I'm like, Megan, slow your roll. Like, you can do other things a different day. It doesn't all have to be, at one time. I think as a mom, though, like, when we have childcare, when we have time to do something, you pick the stuff that you can't get done with kids or don't get it done as well, like cleaning the house or, doing something for yourself. You're like, all right, I'm going to try to fit these 10 things into this hour that my child is off doing something. And it's not realistic.
Yeah.
It's also not realistic for your child to see too, right? Like if you're always constantly playing with your kids, which is amazing, right? But it's like, that's not really life, right? Like they have to go to the grocery store. They have to do this, or this. Yep. I definitely went through a period of time in my life where I tried to get everything done within like the 3 hours my daughter was at preschool. And then by the time she would get home, I was so exhausted. I barely wanted to play, but it also doesn't show her that that's not life. Like she has to learn how to do tasks and responsibilities and all of these things also, because it's not all play, right?
I think that's an excellent point, and there are a couple things recently that I've noticed, as my kids are getting a little bit older and I'm observing their playtime, right? Mm-hmm. One thing that makes me so happy and proud is that they will play going to work and they play my job. which to me is not as interesting as my husband's. He works with animals, but they're walking around like on their laptops, like taking Zoom calls and like,
I
you
love
know,
it.
but it makes me proud. I'm like, they
Yeah.
see that mom works and they're play acting that out versus like what I
Mhm.
think I play acted out as a kid constantly, which was getting married, right? Uh,
Right.
so,
It
which
was getting married.
I love seeing that, right? But I also love, I forget what it was that Amelia said to me the other day. She said something like, you and dad are always talking. Like she
Yeah.
mentioned that. I'm like, well, I'm so glad that they're seeing that, right? That they
Right.
see that, when we're in the car, or I think we were in the car, and she was frustrated probably because we were turning the music down because we were having a
Yeah.
conversation, right? I was like, I'm glad that they see that we are communicating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or little things, right? Like doing an errand, waiting in line for something,
Right.
right? The other day
Right.
we had a conversation. I'm like, well, this is part of life, guys.
Yeah.
We have to wait in line,
Right.
This
Right.
is
It's not all like sunshine and rainbows, which I mean, of course we want that for our children, but it also has to be, realistic. I mean, I don't know
right,
if you listened to the episode yet on the mental health. My friend Marianne and I were talking about how really, I mean, children learn the most just by our actions, like you said. So, I
yes,
mean, they want to be what we are because it's what they see every day. And whether that be like our career or just how we talk to one another, and also how we treat ourselves,
right,
and I think it's just so important that that example be a priority. And this goes back again to taking care of yourself, because if your mental health isn't well and you're not showing up as the person that you really want to be, you have to think like, my child is ultimately going to become who I am, right?
that's right.
Like, so it's more important than ever that
So,
you really like think about who you want to be, because this is who your child's going to become. I mean, think about how many things you do each day that is like your mom, right? And you don't even know you're doing them, right? I mean,
yeah,
this drives me nuts because I'm like, oh my god, why would I ever say that? Or like, but it's like it's just it's ingrained in us because that's what we observed for so many years. So I mean, I don't,
it's really
it's a
fun.
crazy thought, right? It kind of mind blowing, like, oh my God, I need to be what I want my child to be, which of course they're their own individual person, but this is just what they see all day, every day, and it's what they're gonna somewhat become.
Right. No, it's really amazing, right? Because before I had children, I never I never thought I would do some of the things that my mom did. And some of them are not even like negatives, right? They're
Right,
just
right. It's just like what you do.
yeah, they're
Yeah,
just kooky or whatever it
right.
is.
Or you
My mom,
say a phrase that you're like, oh my God, my
yeah, I'm
mom
like,
would
oh
say
my God, I am mom.
that.
Yeah. And my husband and my sisters will call me out on it all the time. They're like,
Yeah,
okay, mom. But yeah, but you're right. It can seem overwhelming, right? But I also think it can seem overwhelming to think I have such a powerful influence over my kids, right? And how do I make sure that I'm, doing the best job possible, right? I mean,
yeah.
nobody's perfect, right?
Mhm.
So we're gonna make mistakes there too.
Absolutely. Yep.
Um, but I think for me, and this was actually modeled for me by my parents, is when I do make a mistake, um, admitting that I made a mistake and
Mm.
saying, "Mom, you should not have said that," or
Yeah.
you know, whatever it is, and apologizing, right? I think that's
Yeah.
important for our children to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Um, and I told Amelia the other day, I forget what it was. She was saying something like, I can't teach you something like that. Like, I'm the kid, I can't teach you. Like, you're the mom,
Mhm.
like, the parents teach, whatever, something like that. And I said, you guys teach me things all of the time.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you can teach us too.
Mhm.
And I love when she will sort of model a lesson back to us. Amelia has a lot of, she has big emotions and she has trouble adjusting once she, feels that she's having a big,
Mhm.
we've been teaching her like, you know, small problem,
Mhm.
let's try to have a small reaction, right? A lot
Mhm.
of times it'll be a small problem, she's having a big reaction.
Mhm.
And the other day, it was kind of a stressful morning, and the dog threw up on the rug, and Ryan yelled at him, and then she said, "Dad, that was a small problem, and you had a big reaction."
Don't you love that?
It was awesome, like she was doing
Yeah.
it respectfully, but I'm like, okay, she is recognizing the lesson, and she's reminding us, right? And he said, "You're right, Amelia. You're right.
Yeah.
Not have yelled at Cooper. Daddy will work on having a smaller reaction, right?" So I think it's important, like, just to remind yourself that you're not going to be perfect, right? You're going to make mistakes, but as long as you are open and honest with your child about that, that's showing them that it's okay to own your mistakes and it's okay to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that's like a huge thing to bring up with your children too. I mean, just to show that you're not perfect and there's no one out there that is perfect. And I always say to my daughter, just like, mistakes are fine. You just have to recognize that it's a mistake and like learn from it and grow from it. You're always going to make mistakes, but that's how, we get better each
that's right.
day. Yeah, I love that. And the big reaction. I mean, I just love when you realize that your kid actually listened to you. You're like, oh my God, that's awesome. Even if she's like using words when she's playing by herself. And I'm like, she's kind of talking like me right now. But
Right.
now I know that she's like actually listening, because sometimes what you'll see when your kids get a little bit older, you wonder, if they're actually like listening to what you say. But they definitely do. And it's just really encouraging, I think, as a parent to be like, all right, I'm doing something right.
Yeah, taking it in. Yeah. And
Yeah.
they are so observant, and
Yeah.
even telling them, like, Mom, I'll go out. We have our treadmill out in the garage, and they'll be like, "Mom, but I want you to play." And I said, "Well, Mom just needs 20 minutes to take care of herself, and then I will come in and play with you." You know what I mean? Them just seeing that, right? That it's important that
Huge.
healthy and we exercise and
Yeah.
all of those things. Or even just like us going on date nights, them seeing that too. And I think a couple years ago, I was so obsessed with, work, kids, that I wouldn't want to go. I'd be like, "No, let's not go out because I want to spend time with the kids." You know what I mean? Like, and so we were never spending time, alone together as a couple, because I just thought I had to make up for all the time I wasn't spending with the kids, but that's not healthy.
Right. Well, yeah, my next question was going to be like, what do you think are the best ways to get rid of that mom guilt?
I mean, it never fully goes away. I mean, I still have it at times, Well, and a lot of times it's triggered by comments other people make. I mean, well-meaning people, even if I'm on a business trip or something, like, "Well, who's got your kids?" It's like, "What do you mean? Who's got my kids?" Like,
Right.
my
Of course, someone has your kids.
right? But it's like no one's asking the men that question. "Oh, you're away for 3 days. Who's got the kids?"
Yeah. It's crazy because there's so many different types of mom guilt too. It's like you're getting guilt because you're successful, right? And that you have this, really successful, demanding job, but you love it, right? And you also have this balance with, like you said, with your spouse and at home. And that's fine. And like, obviously, you're not going to leave your kids alone. Like, what are they even talking about? But then it also comes in like different forms where like you see a mom that's all put together. She might be a stay-at-home mom, but she shows up dressed, makeup on, hair beautiful, and people like make her feel guilty for like taking care of herself. It just like where.
It's like we
And
can
then
never
like you feel guilty if you look like crap too. Like you show up in your sweatpants and no makeup on, and people are like, "Oh God, maybe you should like take care of it." But it's like where can we just be who we are? Be parents and like really accept our lives for what it is.
Exactly. And it is tricky. And, it reminds me a lot. I listened to the podcast on social media, which was really powerful and important, and something that I worry about a lot for my own children, but even for yourself. I mean, all of that, the root of all of that mom guilt is comparison, right? And this is really hard to do, right? But when I do feel that mom guilt, I often just check in with myself and remind myself, right, that I'm not a bad mom, right? And I've never been made to feel that way in a situation where it was actually valid. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I think you're right. I think it a lot of it it's comparison, of course, but like through comparison you feel resentment, right? Because you're like, well, they're doing more. They have more. I need more. I'm not worthy.
Right.
So I feel like you said, like touching base with yourself and maybe even like writing down what you have and what you're grateful for, right? Because like we never need more. You have everything you need right now, as long as you have a safe place to live, your family is healthy, you're
Right.
healthy. Really have everything. So if you check in with yourself and you're like, all right, I'm happy where I am. Like, I do not need to do more. I'm happy being home right now, not at a concert or wherever you saw someone or whatever.
Right.
Or in my sweatpants, showing up with no makeup on.
Yeah.
Whatever. Who cares? If you're happy like that and you're content with your life, then so
Right.
be it. You don't need to compare yourself to
Absolutely.
anybody. Yeah.
And I think that's it, right? I mean, I think that's a big part of it. And I think too, just I make sure like when I'm dropping off my kids and there's a mom in her sweatpants and like often they'll say something about it, like,
Because they feel
like an
insecure.
excuse, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I always make sure to be like, girl, you are fine, you are beautiful. Like, you don't have to explain yourself.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? So I think that's part of it too. But yeah, I mean, I think just checking in and making sure. I mean, sometimes it's a good opportunity to check in with those categories and say,
Mm-hmm.
all right, are we feeling good about these things as a family? If we
Yeah.
are, then everyone else can
Yeah.
go kick rocks. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter. What
Mm-hmm.
matters is that your family unit has created, we'll use the word balance again, right? That works for your family. And that's different for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we all
Absolutely.
also have to know, like, of course, we all look perfect on social media.
Mm-hmm.
That mom who you think has more or is doing things better, like, she's sitting there thinking that you're doing it better than her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no one has it all figured out all of the time, right?
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
that's the other thing, back to the idea of balance as a process, right? Or a balance
Mm-hmm.
as a lifestyle or a practice, I think was the word
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
used. Like, it's not, I always have to fight this picture in my head that the expectation is that I get to some level of happiness, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm there forever, right? And
Yeah.
means I have it figured out. That's not life. That's not how
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah,
right?
you're right.
And just sort of surrendering to the idea of, okay, today was way out of whack, right? Today was way out of balance. All right, so
Yeah.
how do I get that feeling a little bit more recalibrated, right? And
Yeah.
just remembering to, like, every day will be a new set of recalibrations, and that's okay, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's ultimately the way to go, right? Because like you said, so we're not going to be perfect ever, right? That's just not going to happen. And I think like our life looks different every day, whether it be like your meetings at work, what activities are going on for your kids, what activities are going on for you, what your
Right,
workout is for the day. I don't know, every single day is going to be different. So you really do have to check in and just be like, all right, how can I balance this? Who can I ask for help in this area? Where can I be kind to myself too
yeah,
if it doesn't go the way I want to go? Because that's going to happen, right? Especially with children. Who's going to have a tantrum out the door? Am I going to be able to get meals packed? All of these things. So it's never going to be exactly how you have it planned. So do the best you can. Ask
right.
for help where you can, and also be kind to yourself, right? And others.
Mhm.
Like you said, when you see a mom in sweatpants or I mean, I don't care. I wear sweatpants to the store all the time. Like I could really care less,
Same.
and I actually like prefer myself without makeup over makeup day to day.
Mhm.
So, unless I have like meetings or in
Right,
doing interviews, I don't wear
yeah,
makeup, and I'm fine with that.
yeah,
So I mean, just be kind to each other, right? I think like moms judge so quickly, and like you don't know what that person is doing that day. Maybe they're going to weed their garden, or who knows?
totally.
Maybe they just want to chill on the couch. It
Maybe they
doesn't,
were up all night with the baby, you know what I
right?
mean? Or whatever
You
it
don't
is.
know, and maybe that's just the way they like to dress. So I mean, it doesn't matter. And same with the person that's dressed to the nines. Maybe they just really like to dress like that. It doesn't
Right, because
matter.
I'll sometimes catch myself the opposite way, right? If I see a mom, like, super done up, I'm like, "Oh
Hmm.
god," like,
Right.
that's not right either,
Right, because we feel a little bit jealous that we didn't like go to
Right,
that extent, maybe. I don't know. I mean, judgment is always like an insecurity in ourselves, right? So we really just have to reflect back on us. And again, like the comparison and just like, why do I feel less than because she
mm,
feels good, right? Because like
right,
even if someone feels comfortable in their sweatpants, like you almost feel like, well, why is she so comfortable like that when I would feel
yeah,
insecure?
and that goes
Or
back to the workplace stuff too, right? Like, why am I threatened by another woman's
mhm.
success? You know, and it's something, yeah. I mean, I could go on and on about my theories about this, but I mean, we're sort of trained at a very young age, I feel like, to compete with one another as
Yeah.
girls, whether it's for the attention of a boy or, whatever it is. And breaking that cycle, I think, is really key to being happier with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
but also setting a good example for, the other women around
Yeah.
you, younger women around you. As I get older, I'm more and more focused on making sure that I'm modeling a positive, example, not a perfect one, right? But a positive and a productive one, for the younger women around me.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's huge. And I don't yeah, I don't know why that is. I mean, I like I said, I started this podcast just because it's like moms again with the judgment and just like if that person doesn't believe in my beliefs, then I'm gonna judge them, or it's just such touchy subjects, and it's like, why does it need to be like that? Why can't we just all have our own styles of parenting? Because there
Mhm.
really is no bad parenting, right? It's like you and your family and what you and your values are, and that's what you have to go off of.
That's right.
So I really would just want to create a safe space just to talk about these things and put them out there, so it's not such an isolation when you become a mom, because it really is, like I said, with the asking for help. Like you even said, when you felt like you had your depression, you isolated, right? Because you felt like you couldn't put yourself out there. And I
Right.
know I felt like that postpartum as well. I did not have postpartum depression, but I also felt like I couldn't ask for help, and I was just drowning. I was
Yeah.
drowning in sleep deprivation. I was drowning in like trying to be something that I wasn't, as a mom, or what I thought it was going to be, like those expectations. And I didn't know who to talk to about it, or I didn't even know if it was an option to talk about it, or without being judged as a parent.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so interesting you use the word drowning, and that's how I felt too. That's how I ended up describing it when I did describe it. I was drowning, or that I felt like I was underwater, like
Hmm.
almost like everything was, I don't know, out of focus, right?
Mm.
And like a heavy weight on me that I couldn't get out of, right?
Yeah.
But I think for me too, I mean, depression can kind of sneak up on you, right?
Hmm.
And depression looks different, I think,
Hmm.
on lots of people, and it's not
Yeah.
necessarily like crying all of the time or feeling sad.
Hmm.
A lot of the times it manifested for me as anger,
Yeah.
as lashing out and being frustrated and having like a super short fuse,
Hmm.
you know? And I mean, I also struggled with sort of catastrophic thinking, which I think as moms we all do a little bit, right? But
Yeah.
that getting in the way of me enjoying, simple everyday, moments.
Right.
Right. And it's like when you feel that way, even though I knew that my friends and my family would never ever make me feel less than if I told them that I was struggling, it was still this barrier that I felt like I couldn't,
Mm. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. I mean, if you could give any advice out there today, what are some little ways to like start to ask for help?
I mean, I think just acknowledging how you're feeling, right?
Mm.
Um, and to do it like, and to try and communicate it clearly, right? Not like, oh, I've been feeling, so for me, it was saying the words, I'm not doing very well right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Versus saying like, I'm just tired, or I've been feeling a little down,
Yeah.
me actually saying like, I'm not doing well, right?
Yeah.
Um, was important. And that's the first step, is just speaking it out loud to
Right.
somebody, right?
Yeah.
Whoever that is, right? Sometimes it is tough to tell your spouse.
Yeah.
Tell a good friend, tell a family
Yeah.
member.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if you just start with that too, then it might be a little bit easier to tell your spouse
Yeah,
as
for sure.
well. I mean, I try to force myself to tell my husband. I
Mhm.
mean, he's my best friend. He would never ever judge me. He's so supportive in everything that I do. But for some reason, I think it's just so hard to just say like, I feel like crap today. Like I'm not in a good headspace.
I'm
You
not in a
know?
good space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Recognizing that, right?
Yeah.
And I think for me too, it was recognizing the the trigger behaviors, right? Like I was saying, that can sneak up on you. So recognizing in yourself, okay, I just snapped at my kids twice.
Mhm.
Why is that? Like what's going on?
Yeah.
Checking in,
Yeah.
myself,
Right.
or whatever it is, I haven't been sleeping, or,
Mhm.
just making sure that you're aware of the whole spectrum of, signals, right, that either your
Mhm.
body is telling you, right? For me, it
Right.
also triggered a lot of health issues,
Mhm.
a lot of gut issues, a lot of,
Yeah,
sleep
that's
issues,
stress.
uh,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah, well,
being
and you think of too, like, if these produce these issues for you, and this was like farther down the road, I assume, but it's like the stress of like not asking for help puts this stress on your body, like that
absolutely,
it's like, what is it going to do down the line if you continue to go at this rate?
exactly,
I mean, I like to tell parents, like, just find little things each day where you can ask for help. It can be the simplest thing, as like,
practice it,
can you
yeah,
pack Amelia's lunch,
mhm,
or can you clean up the dishes, or even dry the dishes with me, or anything that's just so simple. Can you switch the laundry? I mean, if you
right,
start with like a daily task, it's a little easier than going up and being like, I mentally do not feel well today, because that's really serious, and that's you personally. It's not just like a daily task that has to happen.
right,
So I mean, start as small as you need to start. Sometimes the tasks are hard for me to ask for. I don't know if it's just because my mom always did that stuff,
yeah,
and I feel like I need to do that. Is that hard for you too, Erin, or how?
no.
No. See, I told you you're so good at this stuff. Those are the
No,
things that I have
I'm
to
not, it's
practice.
just, I'm not, right, and actually, that is something that I have mom guilt over, is that
Okay.
I don't like, Ryan does a lot of those
Okay.
tasks, and not even because I'm busy or whatever, like, he just naturally does them, and I don't. I don't always think of them, right? So, like, and that's why he was joking with me the other day about prioritizing activities and, relationships over things like, I'll make a peanut butter sandwich and I'll leave the peanut butter on the counter
Okay.
open. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're not on purpose ignoring that task. You're not even thinking about it, right?"
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so, he will usually load the dishwasher or whatever. So for me, it's actually the opposite. For
Okay.
me, it's reminding myself to push into more of those tasks
Yeah.
to help him, right? And
Okay.
make sure that there's balance, right?
Right. Right.
There. So that was never hard for me to ask for help with that as far as chores go, like, right? But
Yeah.
for me, it was harder to ask for help, like meal planning. Like, I wasn't
Yeah.
very good at it. It was a huge point of stress for me.
Okay.
That's not something he does either. And for me to say to him, like, I need your help. Can you sit down with me and together let's figure out how we're going to feed the family this week?
Yeah. Yeah. But I
Because
think
we
that goes to show, like, it's different for every family, right?
different.
Like, I mean, it's different for every person, different for every family. Yeah, I mean, I think it could be anything really that you struggle with. But I mean, I do think like our society is always portrayed, if you watch any movies, TV shows, the mom is always frazzled, always stressed, and they're always trying to do it all. And it's just
It's,
not necessary.
I mean, it can almost become this like badge, right? Um, of motherhood where you almost feel like that's success, in a way. Not success,
Right.
but you know, that's just a normal, accepted way of being as a mom. And if you're
Yeah.
not, it can almost be the opposite if you're not.
Right. If you're relaxed or like sitting down to read a book, oh, something's
Right.
wrong. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not busy enough. I'm
Right.
not busy enough doing things. I'm not a good mom. Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, I definitely have that feeling. I actually like have to like tell myself to stop doing things and sit down so my
Right.
daughter can see me not being busy, right?
Right.
Like, cuz if you are constantly doing something, constantly stressed, all this, again, your child is going to see this and think this is normal, right?
Right.
Um
I mean, and just thinking too about being constantly busy, right? For me, a lot of times related to work or even just things like planning, I'm sort of the person who plans the social calendar, right? Or,
mhm.
and that puts me on my phone a lot.
Okay.
So that's something that I really struggle with is to put
Mhm.
the phone.
Yeah.
Even if I think I'm doing something productive, right?
Yeah.
Like looking for, I don't know, like a farmer's market to go to or looking for whatever, or for me, because work, is very tied to email,
Mhm.
it's something that I can fall into really easily.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so that's something that actually I need to ask my husband to help me do, right, is to remind me to put the phone down, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not on necessarily on social media, right? And a lot of times
Right.
I think we tie that idea of like the damaging elements of being on your phone to social media, right? But
Mhm.
for me, it's sometimes social media, right? But like it's also tied to work or it's tied to things for the family, right?
Yeah.
But making sure, like, the kids have started to say to me things like noticing that I'm on my phone a lot. And so that's been a wake up call
Yeah.
for me, right? And
Yeah.
I need help, right? I need Ryan to
Right.
help do
Yeah,
it.
and that takes a ton of practice too. And I think it does take calling each other out. We don't do any phones at the dinner table or anything. And I feel like if that does happen, even if it's something like, I mean, it has to be like an emergency, right? Like, and you have to be like, all right, why do you have your phone? Like maybe you should put that away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because again, like if your child sees that when they get a cell phone when they're 13 and you're fighting with
absolutely.
them at the dinner table to get rid of it, you're like, oh, wait, but I did that. So who am I to say you shouldn't
Absolutely.
have that? Yeah.
We have
But
that
yeah,
real
I mean,
dinner table, but
technology in itself, though, is a huge practice that, yeah,
gosh,
that's
yeah,
a constant practice
yeah,
for
and
sure.
it's another one that we're figuring out for the first time.
Yeah.
Our parents didn't have that. We didn't
Yeah.
have it as kids.
Yeah.
That's something that, and, we have to give ourselves a little bit of grace with that. We're the first generation who's
Hmm.
going to raise kids in this type of environment, right?
Yeah.
We're going to have to do some trial and error to figure out what's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, that's something I keep joking that I hope that there's almost this counterculture by the time my kids are older, where like it won't be cool, to be on your phone anymore.
Well, let's make that happen because,
Right?
yeah, it's a crazy world out there,
It really
for sure. So, we're best advice, Erin. Ask for
yeah.
help.
Ask for help. I mean, yeah, I think honestly, the first step is just vocalizing it in some way, right? And being kind to yourself and forgiving yourself, and to realize that, like, for me, the keys were asking for help and then just realizing that it's not, it's that success or happiness or balance is not a thing that you're supposed to reach and then have forever, right?
Yeah.
Surrendering and being okay with the fact that this is a constant act of recalibration, right?
Hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
was the biggest, key for
Yeah.
me. And I think reaching out to, for women who are working, joining a women's group in your industry, right? I
Hmm.
think it's very helpful for me. Being part of a community, outside of work too, where you feel like you have a support system,
Yeah.
whether that be a nanny or whether that be family or, friends that you trust to watch your kids or whatever it is,
Yeah.
just being open to accepting more of that community
Right.
of raising your kid and not thinking that you alone have to do
Right.
all of the things,
Right.
right?
Letting
Um,
go of that control a little bit and knowing that you're not the only one that can change a diaper, right? Like you can let other people change your kid's diaper. Yeah.
yep, yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, I know this will really help and spread the word more about just asking for help. And I do really love seeing the way you balance your life. I think is just very inspiring. And I know, you do have a demanding career, but I also know you spend so much time with your family. And I love to see that. And it's definitely something that I strive to get better at, every single day for sure.
Well, thanks, Meg. I mean, I certainly don't have it all figured out, right? But I try every
Yeah.
right to figure it out, and
Yeah. Well, and I think the whole point is we can learn from each other, right? Like that's why we're here and that's why we're talking about this. So we can just like really just motivate each other just to take those tiny little steps each day to practice, getting better, right? That's the whole point of life. Just get a little bit better each day. Reflect on how you're feeling and see what's going to come that day and how can you can tackle it, really do it
absolutely,
better. Yeah.
absolutely.
utilize all those resources, you have around you. And I like to put out there too that it doesn't have to cost money, right? Because I know a lot of us might not have the money to hire help or do
That's
these
right.
things because I think as soon as you say like ask for help to your mom, they'll be like, well, I don't have the money to do this or this, I have to work. But I think if you really look around, you will find that there are a lot of people that want to help you, or even like nanny shares, babysitting shares, stuff like that that is a lot of resources around you that don't cost, a ton of money that you can find. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or even just talking to your spouse, right? He or she is free. They're free.
Exactly.
It's worth the conversation for sure. I mean, that was life-changing, I feel like, when I started asking my husband for help.
Oh, that's awesome, Meg.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you did that. And
Yeah.
I'm just so glad that you're doing this. I mean, I think it's really important work. And, I've enjoyed listening to the podcast and I've learned things, from listening to them. And again, it's that whole spirit of community and encouraging one another, right?
Right.
In a safe place, that I think is just really awesome. So thanks for doing this. And
yeah, thank you for being here. Oh, you're going to make me cry. And I miss you so much. But
no, I miss you too. We have to get together soon.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for sharing your story and all your tips and stuff. I appreciate it. And I know everyone out there will too.
Good. Thank you, Meg.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Empowerhood is brought to you by Flourish Everyday Coaching. Check them out in the link below. And again, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. If you could take 60 seconds of your time and leave us an Apple review, this helps share the news about this podcast and help women all over the world. If you want to see the video version of this podcast, you can go to our YouTube channel and subscribe there. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next episode.